So issues of women and children are very delicate issues, and more often than not, they are not treated as such. And so today on my banner, we have, and I have the privilege to have the Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection. Her name is Nana Oyelisa. It's a household name. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Many, many happy returns. Yeah. And let's look at your ministry throughout 2014. How has it been with you trying to tackle the issues of, gender, children, and, protection issues? Okay,
we know it's a new ministry that was set up barely 2 years old. In fact, next week will be 2 years since we were set up. So it was a matter of creating a solid foundation and the structures to ensure that we were able to fulfill and exercise our broader mandate. So I can say it's been a good year. In terms of what we set out to do, we've done about 70%.
Wow.
And I'll start by, the first thing was to ensure that we created a solid legal and policy framework. So for gender, we have an affirmative action bill. This affirmative action bill will ensure that we have a minimum of 40% representation of women across all levels: district assemblies, parliament, security sector, justice sector, the labor front, and what have you. So that bill, we have a second draft that is going to the AGs, and then hopefully within a month or two, we hope that we can take it to cabinet for approval. We also have a gender policy, which we have finalized, that is going through validation. One very critical area for us as a country is children's rights. And for me, the Easter Soup Kitchen that multimedia runs was an eye-opener in terms of the large, high numbers of children on the streets. I knew we had the kayaye, the women, the young girls who carry loads, but then I was amazed to see the numbers of very young children who've come from all over Ghana, are at Tema Station and other markets. So we have a child protection welfare policy. We have issues of child labor, the kids on the Volta Lake doing fishing. We have the Kayaye, 17,000 young girls on the streets in Ashanti region, in Greater Accra, and most of the regional capitals of Ghana. We also have issues with juvenile justice. When children are in conflict with the law, how they are taken care of. Our remand homes are crumbling. I visited a remand home at Swedru. I visited the one also in Esipon in the Western region, and realized that, like for Western region, since it was set up in 1946 or 50-something, we have not had any major renovation. So we're also coming up with a child justice policy. We said one area where we need to do a lot of work: recalcitrant parents who are not looking after their children. We have loads and loads of children who are not being looked after by their parents. Either one parent is now the only person who looks after the child, with many attendant problems. So the parents, pay school fees, may not be able to provide adequate food or clothing. Then that child now falls on the street, and then it becomes a social issue. So we're looking at creating an agency or unit, whatever we call it, that will be solely responsible for ensuring that parents pay support, we call it child support, for their children. This will come under the child justice policy. We are doing a lot of work on social protection. The key priority intervention for social protection is creating a database of poor people who should be benefiting. We realized that government runs 44 social protection programs from government budgets. So the question was, to what extent has this led to a reduction of poverty? We can see from 2005 2006 until this year, 2014, we've had we now have a single digit. I think it's about 8.6 or something, from a double digit in 2006. But we want to reduce it even further. So we want to make sure that it is only those who are really in need. They are the ones who we should target for all the pro-poor interventions like the LEAP. Presently, we're targeting 100,000 households. So that will be about 300,000 people benefiting from LEAP, where every 2 months we give them an amount of money.
There have been issues with this LEAP, and the issue has been the fact that people, the beneficiaries, do not really benefit, as government always say. What is the success rate?
Why do you say they do not benefit?
Well,
for what reason?
That has been that even the money given to them, if every day they're supposed to take 5 cedis or something, that is not enough. And so if we want to alleviate poverty, will this be enough to alleviate poverty? So I want to find out from you what the success rate has been with this LEAP service.
I'd say it's been 100%. In the sense, let's say 80%, in the sense that money gets to the beneficiaries in a timely manner every 2 months. I would agree with you that the quantum is small. We are hoping to increase next year. I can't disclose the figure because we're still engaging with the Ministry of Finance, so I can't disclose, but we're looking at increasing the figure for next year. And also we know that we are only able to target 1 out of 10 potential beneficiaries who should actually be on. And we're looking at the poorest, persons above 65 who are not able to cater for themselves, severely disabled persons, and orphans and vulnerable children. So any household that has any of the 3 categories of persons I've mentioned should actually be on LEAP. So we know that we are not able to target everybody. But if you look at from 2007, 2008, when it was started, we've really gone a long way. In terms of addressing, some of the issues with payments, we're rolling out electronic payments. So some of them have about the mobile. MTN is assisting, IR Technology, and eSwitch, so that we're going electronic and using the mobile money, so that the money is on the person's wallet, electronic wallet, and then nobody can collect. Because we also had issues with some of those who are giving the money, collecting 2 Ghana. If the person is receiving 48 Ghana, and then you are collecting 2 Ghana, it's not right. So we are trying to plug in all these loopholes.
But Nana, this year alone, we've experienced a lot of cases. We've recorded a number of child abuse cases, stigmatization, discrimination cases. You can talk of the Sedomi case between Dr. Ali Gabas of the Ifeanyi Kwanta Hospital and the 16-year-old boy. We can also talk about early marriages with special reference to, I think, a 14-year-old girl who was married to the 60 years or 50-year-old man. And then we can also talk about the list goes on. I know of a grandmother who used to dip her grandson's hand into fire because he picks. She thinks that he picks. So that's the way of correcting him. Let me talk about the government's efforts in, closing witch camps as well. Let's look at how your ministry has handled issues of protection, especially regarding those we call the vulnerable.
Yeah, in terms of protection, like I said earlier, we did an assessment of the situation when we were appointed. And the critical thing was the foundation, the fundamentals. If you don't have a policy that clearly articulates what should happen when a child is abused, the institutions that should address the situation, then you have a problem. Then there's a gap. So that is one issue, one intervention that we have now closed the door. We now have a policy that is presently in cabinet for approval. That has been absent forever. The Children's Act was enacted in 1998, and from 1998 until now, there was no child protection policy. So now we have a child protection policy where we'll have training and everything. And in addition to the policy, we have a strategic plan for the next 4 or 5 years on what we should do, what training. We've done a needs assessment and all that. So hopefully this is going to be better. I cannot speak to the sodomy case because it is in court. But to say that the boy is in our custody under social welfare and we are taking care of him because of so many reasons. But for confidentiality, I cannot really, but the boy is in our custody. Even the 3 children who people categorize as alligator children, we took care of them also. They are also in the custody of social welfare. So something happens, interventions are made as and when some of these cases are brought to our attention. But it is our duty as government to address the issues. So it's not like coming to sit on a TV or radio trumpeting what, because it is our duty to protect. So there's no point coming to speak about it. You also mentioned, yes, we acknowledge the fact that the cases of gender-based violence are disturbed, they're high. Yeah. The cases of gender-based violence are high, and we're grappling with a long-lasting interventions. And what we have prioritized are 2: prevention, scaling up prevention. So under our Domestic Violence Secretariat, we have a plan. So very soon you see a lot of adverts, a lot of awareness creation, a lot of programs. And then the second is scaling up male involvement. So getting the area boys, getting the groups in church, the groups in mosques and everything, to realize that we have the negative impact of gender-based violence, and that if we do not address gender-based violence and prevent gender-based violence, it's going to be a problem for us. With early marriage, fortunately, we've received support from the Netherlands and also UNICEF. So also from next year, we're going to have a big program. It's actually started. We're going to have a big program addressing early marriage.
I'm much interested in this program. Can you just elaborate on that? What kind of program is it? What would it be doing to actually prevent this kind of thing?
We are empowering young girls. We've identified the areas, the endemic areas from where we have early marriage. So empowering young girls, and then doing a lot of community engagement with the community leaders and the communities, raising awareness. Like I said, we're going strong on prevention. Then we're also looking at the victims, those who become victims of early marriage, how we can support them. So we're creating a shelter for that. Then we're also doing a lot of engaging with the media, doing a lot of documentaries and all that, telling the stories of that, and then also creating ambassadors who will speak to the issue, speak up against the issue, and encourage Ghanaians not to indulge in early marriage, because it has implications for gender-based violence. It drastically reduces or increases the vulnerabilities of the young girls. So some of the Kayaye that we see are actually victims of early marriage who have run from their communities to Accra because they don't want to be married. So this is something that we're working on. We know the Canadian government is also very interested. We're waiting for them to come on board.
Talking about Kayaye brings on the fact that there's been issues with how we can totally eliminate Kayaye from the cities, or to engage them to do something else. I remember some time ago in Parliament, we're told that you were supposed to come and answer questions pertaining to your ministry, I mean, regarding how you're dealing with Kayaye, but you weren't around. So members of Parliament were not happy about it because they've been looking for answers and it seems they are not getting. So how is your ministry dealing with this? Because it's becoming a canker.
With respect to that, I was not giving the date. But earlier in the year, we had been summoned to Parliament and we had issued a comprehensive statement on the issue and interventions that the ministry and that government was going to adopt to address the issue. Subsequently, the Gender Committee of Parliament on its own did a series of workshops and actually even went to visit some of the sites for the Kayaye, Agbogbloshie, Malata, and others. So Parliament took the lead in that process. What we're doing in 2015 is we're creating service centers in Malata, Agbogbloshie, and Ofori Krom. We're creating service centers where we would have the social welfare officers and other officers to address the immediate humanitarian needs of Kayaye. We're being supported by UNFPA to do that. We are also in our research for addressing or answering the parliamentary question. We realized that 51% come from a particular ethnic group in the north. So there must be some cultural underpinnings to this issue. So we're also addressing that by engaging with some of the traditional authorities, like what occurred with the issue of the witch camps. So we're also initiating an engagement to find out exactly what the sociocultural and traditional issues are, so that we can carve out an intervention that will address, that will be relevant and that would address the issue. But immediately, we're looking at immediate humanitarian needs, like healthcare services, and then we're saying that the law must be enforced. The Children's Act is very clear. You can only work when you're 15 years and above, and even that there are categories of work that you can engage with. So we want to enforce the law. So from next year, if you're not 15, you cannot be on the street. And we're going to hold the parents responsible. So we're going to work with DOSU. Social welfare and DOSU will work together to ensure that basics, if they're not 15 years, you're not on the streets. And so the issue would be now how to determine that. So we're working out the modalities for that. So we have a series of interventions to ensure.
But would it be appropriate, for instance, for like 15 years people to be engaged in, you know, very hard labor like galamsey and all of that? Would
No. The law is the Children's Act is very clear. So there's light work, and that is categorized as hazardous work. So the Children's Act is very clear. That and fishing, that children cannot engage in mining and cannot engage in fishing. That is also an issue that we need to look at. I know Human Rights Watch has a report on children engaged in mining and child labor in mining in some of the areas in the eastern region and all that. And that is also something that we would have to look at for 2015.
So talking about the Children's Act 1998 brings me, let me briefly ask your comments. I know this happened in Uganda, but I know that even worse things happen in Ghana. It's just that maybe we don't have the records of a nanny who brutally, you know, abused a girl or a baby of less than 3 when it was left in her care by the mother. What is your meaning? How do you feel about this as a mother also?
I mean, as a mother and as
and
not just as a mother, but as a career woman who has had to leave children in care of domestic help. That is a big issue, and we all know. I'm sure if you did a program, you would get loads of women and families and parents phoning in to tell you very disheartening stories about experiences with domestic help. And it's both sides. One, what are we doing? One of our tasks as a ministry is to create a legal framework for domestic work. So we're coming up with a law on domestic work where if you're employing a domestic help, you have to draw up a contract. These are the obligations and all that, because we have a lot of domestic workers, and even under TUC and under the Labor Office, there's no legal framework. We have the Labor, the Act, but we need to have a legal framework for domestic workers. So we're coming up with drafting instructions for that. 2, the ministry has the mandate under social welfare and the Department of Children. we have the mandate for care, and under the Children's Act, for care of children from 0 to 3 years, the early childhood, from 0 to 3 years. So we're also assessing, one, under the Department of Children, our coordinating role. So we're coming up with a board to coordinate all issues affecting children aged 0 to 3, because that is a very critical stage of the child's life. Under social welfare too, we license and regulate daycare centers. So we've done some pilot work in terms of looking at the percentage of trained teachers and trained teachers. It came to light that there are some parents who are in need of domestic or in need of care, nannies to take care of their children, babies. It's so bad that they actually even go and leave the kids in daycare centers on Monday, and then they don't go for the kids until Friday, so they can be with the kids over the weekend. So our critical issue is that as a government, we need to ensure that the care of children is as per regulations, as per the law, as per the policy, that there's trained care, issues relating to their health, because at these daycare centers the children eat and they are fed and everything, and it's like every other street there's a daycare center. So there's really, we are also going to engage with the association. They have an association, so that the guidelines are adhered. So then we as a government and as a ministry and as Department of Social Welfare, we need to step up monitoring and regulation. So there's going to be more monitoring and more regulation, and we're going to meet with them and decide that these are the regulations that is going to govern operation of daycare centers. We'll also be doing this with the Ministry of Local Government, since we can't go around the whole of Ghana, but because we have district assemblies, metropolitan and municipal, they can also play a role in that regard.
But are you also considering negligent mothers? Because sometimes we tend to overlook those things, that because mothers give birth to their children, they can never do them wrong. But I can tell you some mothers, or let's say parents, but especially mothers, are negligent, and that is why
we can't make such blanket. I don't think it would be right to make such blanket statements that mostly mothers are negligent. There may be so many reasons.
Some parents, especially mothers, because
I would not accept that.
It is the mothers who give birth to their children, and it is assumed that mothers. I'm not talking about wrong. No, I'm not talking about for instance, bringing money to take care of the child, but little things like looking at what your child is supposed to eat, and if you are negligent about those things.
I don't think we can sit on TV and make a blanket statement, because we need to examine every case. There may be several issues, several. So I don't think, if you can cite cases that have occurred, cases of negligence, that would be in order. But to sit on TV and then make a statement that some mothers are negligent, I think it will be very irresponsible on our part. What we can say is that DOSU is there. It's actually a crime. And so child abuse cases are addressed by the law enforcers. So that is why the Ghana Police Service in 1998 set up the Women and Juvenile Unit, and then subsequently changed it to the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit. That's why we have the Domestic Violence Act. So it's actually a domestic violence issue. It's actually a child abuse issue. And we have the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit of the Ghana Police Service that deals with issues. So I'm sure if you did a media analysis, you come up with several cases, like you mentioned one of the grandmother who dipped the boy's hand in fire. So these are all child abuse cases that are handled by the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Unit. And you even and social welfare also plays a role. So even within the Domestic Violence and Victim Support Units, you have social welfare officers who handle aspects of it. Because like I said, sometimes this happens, then when the police interview, they find out that, well, the mother has to go out and work to feed the kids. So sometimes she's not at home, and then the kids wander around. So social welfare come in to do what we call the social enquiry report. And then if the child needs to be taken away and maybe given to an auntie or a relative, or giving up for foster care, then that happens. And that's why we have drawn up what we call foster care regulations. So we finalized foster care regulations. We're giving to the Attorney General so that it's also passed into law to also help. Like, I'm sure when you were growing up like me, I always had a cousin, I always had a nephew or niece, somebody staying with you.
Because of the extended family.
And sometimes there's abuse. Like these nephews and nieces and cousins and all that stay, sometimes they have to work long hours and all that. So there's also a need to protect their rights. So the ministry under our Department of Social Welfare, now, we've come up with the foster care regulations. So you don't just pick up your niece or your cousin or your aunt, I mean, like you pick up somebody who is a relative to stay in your house. It has to be governed by some law or regulations. So you can see we've been doing quite a bit in terms of making sure that we have all these laws and policies in place.
Okay, so my question was the fact that are you considering, for instance, if you've done your research, because you just can't vaguely say that somebody is irresponsible or something, but if you've done your research well, for instance, and you realize that it was because of negligence on the part of these parents, and that is why their child suffered ABC, are you considering sanctions for such parents?
We have the Children's Act. We have the criminal criminal code or criminal offenses. We have the Act, we have the police service, we have the Attorney General. So we have institutions that have the responsibility of addressing these issues. So there is a process. If a case, and I encourage neighbors, relatives, families to report such cases to the police. An investigation will ensue. If there's a need for prosecution, there'll be prosecution. Sometimes the police get them to sign a bond. If you break the bond, then there are consequences. You know, so there's a legal process that takes place, and then there's court action. So like I said, if you've done your media analysis, you find out that sometimes they are sentenced, some of them are serving prison sentences for child abuse and neglect.
But Nana, I'm particularly worried about this nanny children issue. And I asked the question, has it gotten to the point where if we're going to bring in someone to take care of our children, should we access the mental psychosis? Should we access, because sometimes we don't even do a health check or something and look at who is coming to take care of our children. But
definitely we need to do that. I mean, like, we need to check references. So if somebody is coming to work for you, you need to make sure that the person has references, and you actually check the references. You should know where the person comes from, where the person stays. You should actually go and find out where, because sometimes we get people, we don't even know. They said, okay, I come from Bodom or something. You don't even go and check where the person comes from. You don't know the person. You just then one day you go home and the person has vanished, and then you don't even know how to trace, or the person has stolen your stuff, and you don't even know. So these things are very, very important, that we need to check, do a background check, do references and all that, check to make sure that whoever you are bringing, because you're bringing somebody into your home, so that whoever you're bringing into your home with it. I mean, we've done, it's been ad hoc, and I think we need to be more. The time has come to make. I mean, draw up a contract. You know, just like how you're employing somebody in your office. So when you breach the contract,
you can face the rigors of the law. But let's look quickly at the witch camp thing. I think it's a good thing your ministry is doing. But looking at our cultural backgrounds and how we treat people we assume are witches, what did you consider? And so far, what has been your challenge in doing this?
Well, it's a collaborative effort, and I acknowledge and really commend Action Aid and several other civil society groups, Sontaba, Go Home, and several other civil society, for taking the lead in this. And then we came in last year and then supported. It's been because it's a sensitive sociocultural and traditional issue.
Yeah.
So in terms of strategy, it was very important to get buy-in from the traditional authorities. And we're very grateful to the Northern Region House of Chiefs for the support and then even the technical the advice, you know, in terms of the advice that they gave. Well, if you want to address this, you need to do A, you need to do B, you need to do C. So it was a collective collaboration. I mean, it was a collaboration, and your camera persons and journalists can tell you how it went. I mean, we had more chiefs than government officials.
Wow.
I mean, we had the paramount chiefs who came in that, look, we support this, but you need to also engage with the youth.
Yeah.
So that the paramount chiefs and the traditional authorities were very critical strategic stakeholders, civil society too, because they are on the ground, and so they helped in terms of the support. And then we also had to get buy-in from the shrine, whoever owned, you know, whoever was operating the witch camp. We said we are not going to go into the issue of whether witches exist or not. Because that are personal, religious, and traditional beliefs. And according to Article 26, everybody has a right to his or her cultural belief. So we're not going to go into that. We want to address the ramifications of accusing somebody. And we said, what is it? It's 70-year-old women, 70-year and above women mostly, who populate the witch camps.
I think that the support you had shows how everybody wants to get rid of the stigmatization. You know, we normally stigmatize this, which people we assume are witches, and I believe that it will go a long way. And I'm hoping that you know, in 2015 you close more witch camps. I would have loved to continue this discussion because it's getting interesting. You know, issues with women, children, the vulnerable are very, very delicate issues that we all want to. But on the lighter note,
not only delicate, but they are cocoa and kose bread. I'm not saying bread and butter. Cocoa and kose, they are basic. Because we've all been kids before, haven't we? And we've been able to grow up to become responsible adults.
And we know how our mothers suffer for us. So when we see them being maltreated and all of that, and our fathers. I'm trying to be discriminating.
And our grandmothers.
Anyway, so the lighter note, we hear is in the air that maybe you're going to be standing as a member of parliament.
We'll watch the space. We'll watch the space. Watch the space.
We should watch the space. Well, that's all she say. We should watch the space. That has been my banner, and it's being with Nanoye Litha. It's been an interesting discussion. I'm hoping to continue this discussion on another platform. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. We'll be back shortly with the AM show. Okay, my director is saying that time is fast spent, so I should just quickly end the show. So it's been nice hanging out with you. My name is Aisha. I've been doing AM show with Kwabena Chenchenhene Boateng. See you same time tomorrow. Have a great day.